Well, our culture has become so deceived and confused that it can't even recognise biological reality, even when living through it. Yet the TVNZ taxpayer-funded documentary Trans and Pregnant, which screened earlier this week, was not only a celebration of biology and new life, but it probably affirmed what the producers never wanted you to realise. Biology always wins. Let's check it out. So here's the promo for the documentary that was shown on Monday night on TVNZ.
They love each other, and this is their life story.
Documentary New Zealand begins with Trans and Pregnant, November 11th on 1 and TVNZ Plus.
Yes, the Stuff News headline said what it's like to be trans and pregnant. The New Zealand Herald said trans man's pregnancy and birthing journey in Aotearoa. And One News said trans and pregnant couple shared journey to parenthood, first of its kind. Yes, I know you thought we had independent media competing against each other, but not when it's pushing a certain narrative, and especially this narrative. But is it a first of its kind? Well, actually, no, not at all. And that's the irony. But let's check the media coverage. Firstly, from Stuff. Gay couples who want to become dads usually have to turn to surrogacy or adoption to have children, but Frankie and Rawa have another option available to them. Frankie, who uses they-them pronouns, is a trans man, so a biological woman, and can still carry a child. Shock horror. Although there are many challenges for them and Rawa in that process. Okay, some verbal linguistics there. Gymnastics. There are many challenges for them and Rawa. It blows people's minds. The producer said it blows people's minds in a lot of ways, but actually it's quite simple. It's just two men that are in love and one of them is physically able to have a baby. Smith says the couple never had any doubts about sharing their story with the world. They put themselves out there and they go through it in the hope that they can change people's perceptions. They both work in the advocacy space and really care about representation. So before we discuss this, let me just reiterate that this couple want to change people's perceptions. They are advocating. They have put themselves out there. Therefore, it is only correct and appropriate that if that's what they're doing, we can respond and critique exactly what they're doing. In fact, they've invited us to critique their situation. So your taxpayer dollars have been used by New Zealand On Air to follow this couple. Why? Well, it's not because a couple having a child is unique. In fact, a baby is born every 9 minutes, just over every 9 minutes in New Zealand. This is unique because a narrative is being pushed in this documentary. And in our post-truth culture, a man, apparently, can now have a baby, except he can't. And this documentary confirms that. So let's have a watch. I want to show you a few excerpts from it. And the cognitive dissonance rings loud almost from the start. Have a listen to the commentary.
I worry about the wider perceptions on society, both as a bi person myself and Frankie being a trans gay man. Our dream is to have the child as naturally as possible.
Have the child as naturally as possible. Naturally as possible? Well, that's a male and a female. There is no alternative. Biology is prejudicial. It discriminates. So that wasn't a good start, but let's get into some detail now. And the trans man, the biological woman, she says she knew she was trans at 6. Yes, 6. And listen to the sexual and gender identity statements at the end of this clip. You'll need to concentrate.
I knew I was trans from about 6. I can remember asking for a David Beckham haircut, and I was able to have my David Beckham haircut, shopped at Hallenstein's, wore Planet 8, which was really cool back then. I grew up in Wanganui. My parents migrated from South Africa just before I was born. Wanganui is quite a conservative place. There weren't many other queer people I knew, so it was quite challenging. I actually started socially transitioning at 18. So I lived as a man for 2 years and then went off to the endocrinologist and started testosterone. I've been on testosterone for 6 years. I get an injection every 3 months that maintains my testosterone levels in my body. After a few years, I felt comfortable enough in myself that I felt that other people saw me as the man I am to go and start dating other men. And I'm exclusively attracted to cis gay men, meaning people who have been born male and identify as male.
I knew from a very long time ago, and I actually had visions of being attracted to a trans guy. At the age of 26, I came out as bi. I know that regardless of gender, I am attracted to masculinity.
Okay, so she's exclusively attracted to cis gay men. So she's attracted to men, but gay men, so they're not attracted to her. And the partner had visions of being attracted to a trans guy, which is a woman. Now, don't think too hard, but they're both heterosexual, not gay. But one is trans and one is bisexual, so we fit the label. But she is now a man, so how can she conceive? Well, have a listen, because at the end of this clip, they discover the truth.
Do you think you'll be able to conceive naturally without any assistance?
They do indicate that when you are on testosterone, it can inhibit a person's ability to reproduce, but there is a common misconception that being on testosterone suppresses reproduction entirely. If we could keep me on testosterone, but at a lower level, that would curb some of the concerns around dysphoria from coming off testosterone and my body slowly returning back to a somewhat female form.
Returning to a female form. Yes, if you stop the wrong sex drugs, biology will have its way. Who would have thought? But as the documentary continues, the problem is conservative people and family members. You know, those who believe that only a woman can get pregnant.
One of the uphill battles is probably changing hearts and minds of family, particularly quite conservative family members.
Some people can get through the process of transition, they understand that, but the leap to transition and also have a baby, they can't quite get to. To the point where they're very dismissive of us as a couple. The good thing is we're both each other's biggest champions.
Yeah, they're not dismissive. It's just they believe in the biological truth that only women can get pregnant. But then we hear about decoupling having kids from being feminine, from being a woman. You see, deep down, she wanted to have kids, right from being young. Now, as you watch this clip, ask yourself, where did this longing come from?
I'd known very early on that I wanted to have kids myself, and so you can imagine being about 6 years old and trying to reconcile this. I'm a man and I identify as a man, but also this desire to carry and have your own children is quite complicated. I mean, even to the point I'd gone and had a consultation about having a hysterectomy, and they said to me, Frankie, are you sure you don't want to have kids? And I couldn't answer that question, so I went away and I thought about it. And I suppose it was part of decoupling the idea of being able to have kids with the idea of that being inherently feminine. We're starting the process where we're going to have to be navigating maternity services, or as I like to call them, people who give birth services. So we're really keen to work to change the language around that, to make it more inclusive. We would hope that through our experience, and we're definitely not the first people to go through this, that we can help make those services more accessible for the people who go after us.
Yeah, through our experience, we can make the services more accessible. Every pregnant woman can access those services. All sorted. Okay, so we then find out that she had to go off testosterone because obviously that's not going to help. But fertility associates who can help women get pregnant will help here. Now, beware. In this clip, there's a lot of woman talk going on. A lot.
I worry about if it's done with using special pills to get pregnant and people saying, well, actually, they got pregnant on special pills and, it's not natural birth. And what that has for a narrative for the trans community.
All right, well, guys, great to see you again.
Nice to see
you. It's been a while.
Yep.
I think it's been about a year.
I think so,
since we had our first meeting. Just to recap, Frankie, I understand, back then you had stopped your testosterone.
Correct, yep.
Because we wanted to see what your cycle would do.
Mm-hmm.
That's come back.
Yep.
What's happening with your cycle at the moment?
I'm pretty sure I don't ovulate in the normal window. It's usually about 21 days rather than 11 or 10 or whatever the usual is.
Oh, I see. So you feel that you possibly ovulate
Later.
Later.
What normal people would predict, I suppose, through the apps and stuff.
Right. When someone ovulates later, it might be that the lining of the uterus is past its use-by date, and there has been some research to show that miscarriage rates might be higher in that setting. So to try and mitigate that further, we would potentially look at using a medication called letrozole to try and regulate your cycle in a more predictable way. The overall term for this is called ovulation induction. The idea behind this is that you ovulate earlier. How we would typically do that is you would let our nursing team know when your period's arrived. You would then be instructed to take letrozole from days 3 to 7. Now, we, or as in you, have to be a bit patient with this in that it can be a bit of a dose-finding exercise sometimes. And of course, we're dealing with biology, not mechanics here.
We're dealing with biology here. Did I hear that right? Did that doctor not get the memo about ideology and identity? And then, well, it continues. The next question doesn't help.
Anything about Frankie being trans or having had those hormonal replacement therapies that may impact on the pregnancy?
There should not be, because once the uterus has had a period of time away from the suppression of the testosterone, it's an amazing organ, actually. It can respond to the estrogens and progesterones that pregnancy involves, and the pregnancy should progress in a normal way.
Yes, it's an amazing organ when we let biology run its course. Okay, this isn't going the way you probably expected it. I mean, wasn't this about a man having a baby? We're turning him back into a woman. But TVNZ said this was a first of its kind. Now, here's the best bit of the documentary in my view. The 13-week scan. This is the most biologically pro-life thing you will see on state television. The unborn child is a living, breathing human being. Enjoy.
So you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's see what we've got.
Diane's a really dear friend. They've been a sonographer for a lot longer than I've known Elaine, and will be able to help us with all of the scans to make sure that the fetus is healthy. Oh, look.
It feels quite surreal because it finally looks like a little human rather than an alien. Yeah.
Ooh.
No, it was pretty special.
It's really reassuring to see everything well and the heart rate going. And then, of course, just seeing the shape of the baby come together is just, it's, I don't know. You have your own imagination of what it's going to look like, and then you just see it, and it's quite touching and quite surreal and, means everything.
Yes, you can say it. it's a miracle. A newborn life created in the womb of a woman, just as nature intended it. But remember, as TVNZ told you, it's the first of its kind, apparently. But look, there's a lot of biology, hormones, periods, mothering, nature, and pro-life messaging in this documentary. So, yeah, I'm a bit worried. We need to get some gender ideology back into the narrative. And never mind the penis or the lack of it.
I say to people, I think it's intensely hypocritical for me to be hung up on what sex the baby is. So when people ask, I go, oh, do you know if you're having a girl or a boy? And I say, well, the baby could be intersex, but also we don't care, you know. We just want a healthy child, and that could change. And then they go, oh, of course, like, you know, for you guys that wouldn't matter. And I think a lot of people place a lot of emphasis on the sex of the baby, and it's just ridiculous. It's not like we're doing the beige baby thing and there's not going to be any colour in the child's life until they decide what colour they like or anything like that. It's just we're being open to the fact that the baby will be whoever they are.
Well, the documentary concludes with showing the birth. I'm not going to show you it because it's nothing new. In fact, in the time of watching this McBLOG episode, 2 babies will have been born in New Zealand. But here's the outcome of what we just watched. Biology wins. But that didn't stop our good friends on TVNZ's Breakfast, who did an interview with the couple. And have a listen to the brilliant opening question from the host. An all-time classic question to a biological female who has had a baby. Are you ready?
So good to have the 3 of you on the show. How are you?
Very good, thank you.
Yeah, Frankie, you carried Hiwi Tarangi.
I did, yes.
I wonder whether you can talk to me about that journey.
What a question. You carried that child. Wow, that is breaking news, isn't it? Biological woman gets pregnant. Woman carries child. Biological woman has baby. Only Breakfast on One could think that this is news. But when it comes to a narrative designed to confuse biology, deny reality and push a radical agenda, go no further than our media. And sadly, funded by your tax dollars via New Zealand On Air, apparently more than $230,000 of your taxpayer funding. There was, there was one really interesting comment on that Breakfast interview though. Have a listen, see if you can catch it.
You know, at some point we know that he will surpass us in cultural identity and in the reo.
Beautiful,
yeah, and he'll run rings around us, but...
Did you hear that? He'll run rings around us. Wow. He's only 1 or 2 years old and he's already picked his gender. Because remember, the parents said they certainly weren't going to allocate one. Look, here's the conclusion. We've seen a miracle of life. In some ways, you want to say congratulations to the parents. A child has a right to know their biological parents, their biological mother and father. Ironically, this child does know his biological mother and father. It's just that the adults don't know that. I actually think that rather than pushing a radical narrative, which was the producer's intention and TVNZ's, this documentary has spectacularly backfired. The loudest voice in this documentary was biology. Only women can get pregnant, give birth, and be mothers. Biology will always win, thankfully.